Today's podcast is brought to you by Chikara Wrestle Factory, 4711 Wingate Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, specializing in lucha libre, puroresu, European, British, and German styles, mixed martial arts, and American pro wrestling, all built into the curriculum at the Wrestle Factory, which strives to create the most well-rounded performers active today. Hey yo, Fro Wrestling Podcast listeners, help us out and click the subscribe button to show your support. Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the Fro Wrestling Podcast. This episode is a very special one. Many of the listeners to this podcast are younger wrestling fans who are still making their way through school. I've received a whole lot of inquiries from people about what a student in high school can do to make it into the wrestling business. What do they really need to finish their schooling for if they're going to be planning on becoming a wrestler? I've expressed to many of them that in my own personal life, before I found my passion as an educator, as a student in school, I wanted nothing more than to be a professional wrestler. I got to be such a huge, it really was a huge goal of mine that my father and I actually got into a really bad argument over my thought process, which was I wanted to drop out of high school and pursue my dream of becoming a wrestler in the World Wrestling Entertainment, WWF at the time. He was not so fond of that. So to curb my desire to go into wrestling and to drop out of school, he did something for me. He took me to the Wild Samoans training school in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And when we got there, I had no idea why we were there. And when we walked in the door, off of the Wild Samoan and Captain Lou Albano were in there, and I started to freak out. I'm a raving mark for wrestlers anyways, and I thought my dad must have changed his mind, and we were there so I can get started following my dream. I want to be a wrestler, And instead, as soon as we got in there, Captain Lou Albano made me sit down, and I was given this long, serious talk about the importance of getting my education, what I should do, how I should finish out high school, even go to college if I have that in me, and then think about my career or my possible career in the world of professional wrestling. Instead, when that was over, my whole path changed. Not that I didn't still want to wrestle. I mean, even now at 40 years old, I still think about what it would have been like to just one time walk out, hear some music play or whatever, and walk down the aisle. It would have been amazing. But in the end, I'm really happy with everything I've done in my life, and I owe a lot of that to that conversation with Alpha the Wild Samoan and to Lou Albano. They took the time to sit down with a kid who was still in school, who was kind of confused about what he wanted to do with his life, and they really helped sort things out for me. And they made it so I started thinking about the future in a way that I hadn't before that conversation. That being said, tonight is a very special night. I'm actually headed down to Monster Mania Con 36 at the Crowne Plaza in Cherry Hill, New Jersey for a very special interview with someone who shares some of the same philosophy I have about the business and about what you need to do if this is something you aspire to do. So we're going to head down there right now, and we're going to have a conversation with someone very special to the wrestling fans. Today I'm hoping that those who've been sending me messages about the following their dreams and all that, I'm hoping they're impacted the same way I was in my past. I have a very special guest for the Fro Wrestling Podcast, former NWA and WWF Superstar, Hall of Famer, and legendary member of the Four Horsemen, Tully Blanchard. How you doing, Mr. Blanchard?
I am doing great. It's good to be here.
Thank you so much for taking time with us. I wanted to ask you a few questions today, pretty much about the process for these young listeners. Should they pursue their career in professional wrestling? How do they go about getting started on that path? How important do you feel it is to get their education before that?
Well, education is very important in anybody's life. It is. I got my college degree before I went into wrestling. I got my college degree in radio and television because I knew I was going to be in the wrestling business, because my dad was in the wrestling business and was a promoter in South Texas. He owns Southwest Championship Wrestling, and I knew that would be the family business. So I set out to learn business and radio and television because I knew that would be the future of that business, and then the thing that I wasn't planning on was actually being in the ring and ultimately being a star in that right. So that kind of changed my direction of my wrestling career.
How long do new wrestlers have to train before they become a wrestler?
Today, I don't have any idea. I really don't. It's there's a lot of guys that will take your money and train you, but if you go to a wrestling school and when you come out the other end and don't have a job, I'm not sure that that's a good use of spending money. So, you kind of have to research that and what the employment possibilities would be, what the potential of employment, and then you have to look at what your goals are. I mean, if it is to be part-time and wrestle on the weekends and have fun at it, that's one thing rather than making a profession out of it.
That's cool.
So,
when you finish school, is it really hard to get booked on independent shows?
I don't know it, but it wasn't hard for me to get booked back in those days because my dad was a promoter and he knew a lot of people, and I was able to get booked.
Does a company like WWE use like a different screening system for how they bring in people?
Well, that's NXT is part of their screening system, and they have groups that try out, and if they think that you've got potential, they put you under contract and start training you. But I'm so far withdrawn from that arena. I don't know the process near well enough to give an opinion on it.
I hope you guys listen are understanding. Like, the education part is huge. Since there's a wrestling podcast, I told them I was going to be doing a little bit of an interview. They had a couple questions for you. Somebody asked, like, you've wrestled so many people: Dusty Rhodes, Steamboat, the World Warriors, Rock and Roll Express, all these guys. Is there anybody that stands out as being your favorite opponent?
Well, usually your favorite opponent is the person you got paid the most to wrestle. And there would be a few people in that category, but the most money I ever made in one match was when I wrestled Magnum TA in the I Quit match in Starrcade 1985.
Which I don't think you actually ever said I quit.
And I didn't. So the match should still be going on.
It's like the lore of pro wrestling. I don't think it ever actually happened. Do you have any of like what your fondest memory is of your time on the road?
Well, I mean, it was a great time to be in the wrestling business in the mid '80s as the wrestling was changed by cable television as well as other media. Cable television just changed everything, because now everybody could have access to pay-per-views and stuff and not even have to leave your house.
That was actually my next question. Do you remember what it was like that first time you knew it was like a pay-per-view situation? Was it different, or?
Well, I mean, it was a pretty big deal, because our first pay-per-view with WCW was a match in Baltimore, and Arn and I wrestled Sting and Nikita Koloff, and that was the first match on the card, and that
was a Great American Bash, wasn't it? I don't like 87, 88 or something like that.
Yeah, it was. I don't know that it was a bash, but it might have been. It was in Baltimore at the auditorium right down on the water on the bayfront, and it was a big deal.
Well, that's actually all the questions I had. I really want to thank you for taking the time to benefit our young listeners who they really want to follow their dreams, becoming a wrestler themselves. Hopefully they learn something valuable about getting their education before they jump into the business.
You have to have an education, because you might have the same kind of skill as the next person and put on your resume. If you've got a high school equivalency diploma and somebody's got a high school diploma, they're going to take the high school diploma. If you've got a 2-year degree at a college and the person you're up against on a job interview and they've only got a high school diploma, they're taking the guy with the 2-year degree. And nobody can take your degrees away from you. I've got the diploma up on my wall in my office, and nobody can take it away. I spent the time to get my 4-year degree, and I've got it, and I'm 63 years old, and I still got it.
That was West Texas State.
West Texas State's where I graduated from, yes.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
There you have it, guys. That is the interview we had today with Tully Blanchard. I really cannot tell you how much I appreciate him taking a few moments for us today. It was really great to get to meet someone who, as a child, was such a huge influence on me personally. I was a huge Horsemen fan, and, Tully Blanchard was always the guy who was not necessarily the biggest man out there, but had some of the best skill set, the best move set, and was just tenacious in the ring, and it really meant a lot that he took the time to have a conversation with us today about something that I feel is so important. And if it's something where you are looking to get into the business at some point, I hope you took something from what he said. Knock out the education first, but absolutely pursue your dreams. At the onset of every one of our episodes of our podcast, if you are in the Philadelphia marketplace where I am, we always throw out that the Chikara Wrestle Factory is very local to our area. It's located at 4711 Wingate Street in Philadelphia. If something that you want to do is be a professional wrestler, there is an opportunity to do that. But by all means, the message here is make sure you knock out your responsibilities in school, get yourself educated first, and then you have the better way to negotiate for yourself and try to find your way through the business. Otherwise, you don't want to set yourself up for failure. And the reality is if you don't know how to negotiate a contract for yourself, if you don't know what it is you're signing when you join some of these promotions, it could put you in a bad way. And we don't want to see that for any of our listeners. So I hope you took something from today's podcast. If not, we did our best. And what we're hoping to do is bring you even more interviews and more conversations with some of the stars from today and yesterday, and try to make our podcast really pop for y'all and bring you guys something that you can really appreciate. So until next time, thank you so much for tuning in to the Fro Wrestling Podcast. By all means, go to our website at www.frolifeplanning.com if you need help finding your way to higher education or a new career. It's what we do at Fro Life Planning. And by all means, pop in, enter our contest. We're giving away every month one free 30-minute one-on-one phone consultation to the person who wins our contest. Now, entering the contest is simple. Pop onto iTunes, turn it on your computer, go to our Fro Wrestling Podcast webpage on iTunes, click subscribe, and then go down and give us a review. Write us a review about what you think of our podcast, and then submit that. We'll match that up with going to our contest page, and one lucky winner each month will have their name drawn to have that one-on-one consultation. Hopefully we can make an impact in helping you grow your future, expand your horizons to more and more opportunities, even if that includes becoming a professional wrestler. We want to thank everybody today for tuning in. We really appreciate our loyal followers, and I really hope you enjoyed this opportunity to sit down and have a conversation with Tully Blanchard. Until the next time, take care, everybody.